Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada Bio is sworn in for a second term after being declared winner of the presidential elections, but the opposition has rejected the results. Muslims around the world celebrate Eid al-Adha, one of Islam's two main festivals, marking the climax of the annual Hajj pilgrimage. And in our technology report, a Ghanaian innovator is exporting bamboo bikes to the United States and other countries. How are the bikes empowering rural communities? We'll tell you more. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We begin in West Africa, where Sierra Leonean incumbent President Julius Maada Bio secured victory in the country's presidential election with more than 56%, according to the Electoral Commission. Main opposition candidate Samura Kamara has rejected the results, saying they are not credible. Paul Ndiho has more.
Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada Bio was sworn in on Tuesday night after being declared the victor of an election his main rival slammed as not credible. Bio, 59, was running for re-election after a first term marred by growing frustration over economic hardship.
I hereby certify that Bio Julius Maada, having polled 1,566,932 of the valid vote cast, representing 56.17% of the total valid vote cast in the 24th June 2023 presidential election, duly elected President of the Republic.
Sierra Leone's leading opposition candidate has rejected the results of an election that he says are not credible. Samura Kamara, 72, who suffered a narrow defeat in 2018 election, received about 41% of the votes this time. Kamara said on Twitter after the announcement of the final result, quote, "The election held on Saturday, June 24th was tense, with violence breaking out before, during and after the vote. International observers and the United States have also pointed out the lack of transparency in the counting process." Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Sure. For some reaction to the presidential election results, our reporter Senanu Todd spoke to people on the streets of Freetown.
My name is James Bill Palmer, a full supporter of Sierra Leone's People Party. And also, today we both don't be victorious, which is His Excellency Retired Brigadier Julius Maada Bio, which of course we don't do a lot of campaign, and today we don't become a victorious. As you can see, we still supporters and no happy moment for now, because we don't see we both don't become a victorious, and the people that hope to support, they all don't become a victorious, like of Gentos and others and hope to support. So today match we has a very good, victorious and a very happy moment for now.
My name is Najena Bujalo. I want to first of all say I congratulate His Excellency Julius Maada Bio, and we pray that God will give him wisdom for continuing for rule this country. I feel happy though, because the most important thing in the country is peace. Any party will win, as long as we all get peace of mind, we are happy.
My name is Joseph S. Mansari. I'm an APC supporter. The outcome of the result, sincerely, I was not happy, because looking at the situation of the country and what we are going through, the bread and butter this government was talking about, they are able to meet the requirements. So when the people go to the ballot box to vote in for our party, we believe that the APC won this election, but we do not know the next commissioner come up with this result, because the result did not reflect to what the people voted for, sincerely speaking. So we are looking at the stakeholder of the APC, what will be the outcome, and then who will work to that as the grassroots of the supporter of the APC. Well, sincerely looking at the 5-year backward of this present government, they do not deliver what they promised to the people, because they talk about bread and butter. We do not meet to that level. They also talk about this new currency, and we see how this new currency have fall. Looking at our neighboring countries, Guinea and Liberia, their currency are far way better than ours. So for them to win this election mean there is another 5-year backwardness again. We are going to suffer for another 5 years.
Sierra Leoneans there reacting to the presidential election results. Muslim pilgrims are continuing their traditional practices during the annual Hajj, which runs through Saturday in Saudi Arabia. Tuesday, participants threw stones at pillars representing the devil in a symbolic casting away of evil. They must throw 21 pebbles at each of the 3 25-meter pillars that represent the devil in a symbolic rejection of temptation. The final 3 days of the Hajj coincide with the festive Eid al-Adha holiday, when Muslims around the world slaughter livestock and distribute the meat to the poor. Citizens of countries in the Middle East and North Africa are struggling with rampant inflation and rising costs of fodder are finding it difficult to sell or buy sheep for slaughter, a tradition upheld for years during the annual Muslim holiday of Eid al-Adha. Eid al-Adha, one of Islam's 2 main festivals, marks the climax of the annual Hajj pilgrimage, when Muslims slaughter animals to commemorate the willingness of Abraham to sacrifice his son on God's command, often distributing meat to the poor. Citizens in the region were hit by a sharp rise in prices compared to previous years.
Because of the war in Sudan, the sheep usually brought in from Sudan have not come in, and that's why prices are higher, and people can't afford to buy them like they do every year. The situation is bad, as you can see here. People are here to look for sheep, but can't afford to buy them.
Many Muslims in the region are now compelled to decide between upholding the centuries-old tradition or skipping it altogether. Plans by a United Nations agency to cut food aid from July 1st for refugees in Uganda, Africa's biggest refugee host, are expected to worsen their struggle with food shortages from climate change. The UN's World Food Programme says aid cuts leave them no choice but to help only the most vulnerable. Halima Thumani reports from Palorinya refugee camp in Obongi district, Uganda.
In Uganda's Palorinya refugee camp, gardens are filled with corn, but there will be little to harvest. Father of 9, Eid Alfred, says in the past his garden yielded 2 bags of corn, but with the prolonged drought this year, he expects nothing.
When you look at these crops, they are not drought resistant. They need constant rain for a good harvest. Without rain, I won't get anything. They will die completely.
The UN's refugee agency says Uganda is home to more than 1.5 million refugees and asylum seekers, making it the largest host in Africa. Uganda's government provides each family with a 9 by 9 meter plot for a house and a small garden. But it's not enough to survive for refugee families like mother of 5, Naima Poni, who treks to the border with South Sudan to buy food.
The food is very little. My children is now growing. They're eating too much. Even though no food is not enough.
The UN says it has only received 27% of the funding needed for refugees in Uganda, so it has been forced to switch for the first time to targeted assistance from July 1st. Households considered most vulnerable, such as those headed by women or the chronically ill, will receive 60% of the recommended monthly food ration. Other refugees will get just 30%. The World Food Programme's Deputy Director for Uganda, Marcus Pryor, says officials will keep a close watch for serious negative impacts from the food cuts.
We'll look at things like people's food consumption, we'll look at malnutrition rates, we'll look at the kind of survival strategies that refugees resort to if they are in difficulties. And this will allow us to take our case to those who support the World Food Programme and the refugee response more broadly.
Refugee leader Kenyi Moses says he is already seeing an impact from the drought and food aid cuts. Some refugees are leaving.
Most of our households right now, they were only left in the hands of younger children. Most of our people have gone back to South Sudan. And very well, when he knew the situation is not all that favoring, these children alone, as being a children, they cannot hate as a family.
The World Food Programme in Uganda says it needs at least $64 million to support the refugees until the end of the year. Halima Athmani for VOA News, Palorinya refugee camp in Obongi district, Uganda.
The United States Tuesday accused companies in the United Arab Emirates, the Central African Republic and Russia of engaging in illicit gold deals to help fund the mercenary fighters of Russia's Wagner Group. The U.S. Treasury Department said in a statement it has sanctioned 4 companies linked to Wagner and its leader that it alleged were used to help pay the paramilitary forces fighting in Ukraine and undertaking operations to support Russian interests in Africa. The State Department said the sanctions were unrelated to Wagner's short-lived mutiny last weekend against Russian President Vladimir Putin and Moscow's defense leadership for its handling of Russia's war against Ukraine.
Whatever you call Wagner Group, I think what's important are the steps that we take to hold them accountable. And the United States has taken another number of steps to hold Wagner accountable in imposing sanctions, as I said, indicting the head of Wagner, Yevgeny Prigozhin. And we will continue to take steps to hold them accountable. I don't think the label is as important as what we do. And I would say stay tuned. In the very near future, you will see additional steps by the United States to hold them accountable for actions they've taken.
The sanctions block any assets that companies hold in the U.S. and prohibit them from engaging in new deals in the United States. Let us know what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, from Ghana to the U.S. A Ghanaian innovator supports rural communities by exporting his bamboo bikes. Stay tuned.
This week on Straight Talk Africa, the leader of Russia's Wagner militia group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, and his mercenaries marched towards Moscow last week and then retracted, claiming they never planned to overthrow the government. But some are wondering whether these are signs of cracks in Russian President Vladimir Putin's power. Also, what does this mutiny mean for African countries who align themselves with Putin and the Wagner group? Join me, Haiti Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
In other news, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius says the country is looking to pull its soldiers out of Mali faster, though still in an ordered manner, in light of the planned end of a United Nations peacekeeping mission on June 30th. In Sudan, thousands of men who worked as intelligence operatives under former President Omar al-Bashir and have ties to his Islamist movement are fighting alongside the army in Sudan's war, according to 3 military sources and 1 intelligence source, complicating efforts to end the bloodshed. And European Union election observers for Nigeria are urging for reforms to enhance transparency, saying Nigeria's elections early this year were marred by problems that reduced public trust in electoral processes. An audio recording obtained by U.S. news organizations reveals former President Donald Trump discussing secret documents about a plan to attack Iran after leaving office in 2021, undercutting his recent claim that the papers he was looking at were newspaper and magazine articles. Federal prosecutors cited parts of the July 2021 conversation in a 37-count indictment earlier this month on charges that he illegally retained classified government documents when his presidency ended and then conspired to obstruct a federal investigation. He pleaded not guilty to the indictment earlier this month. Trump's valet, Walt Nauta, was also indicted in the case, accused of helping Trump hide the classified material from investigators. He has yet to enter a plea in his case, and his arraignment was delayed Tuesday until July 6th. Justice Department Special Counsel Jack Smith filed the classified documents indictment against Trump. Smith is separately investigating Trump's actions in trying to append the outcome of the 2020 election that he lost to Democrat Joe Biden and his role in the January 6, 2021 riot at the U.S. Capitol, in which about 2,000 Trump supporters stormed the building to try to block lawmakers from officially certifying that Biden had won. The work of journalists can range from covering crime scenes to conflict zones, among other stories. The University of Toronto is looking at the toll journalism can take on reporters and offering newsrooms insights into what they can do to help. From New York, VOA's Christina Caicedo-Smith has the details.
What impact does a career covering famine, war, disasters, and insurrection have on the journalists covering them? That's the question Anthony Feinstein set out to find. For the past 23 years, the professor in psychiatry at the University of Toronto has amassed a database from surveys of over 1,100 journalists, comparing the results from reporters on the front lines with those who cover less dramatic beats. His study, Predictors of Psychological Distress in Frontline Journalists, finds that female journalists may be affected to a greater extent because they are more vulnerable to violent acts.
And you see more depression in women journalists than men. It's a very consistent finding across whatever country we've looked at, in multiple countries now. It's something that kind of transcends country, transcends culture. Women journalists are more at risk.
But there are steps that newsrooms can take. Alison Baskerville is an editorial security specialist for Reuters news agency. Her job is to ensure that journalists in conflict zones have the resources they need.
And also, as the safety people, we need to understand how much exposure they have to that kind of threat and what it is doing to their mental health.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, was first recognized by the American Psychiatric Association in 1980, but newsrooms worldwide have been slow to recognize how it affects reporters. Hannah Storm is the founder of Headlines Network, an organization that provides newsrooms with mental health support and training. She says recognition of the issue is important.
There's more of a realization in newsrooms that we need to address and acknowledge and normalize conversations around mental health and the impact of our work on us.
Thanks to Feinstein, safety specialists have more than 2 decades of data collected from journalists who have covered a range of stories, from the conflicts in the Balkans and war in Iraq to the 9/11 attacks and drug-related violence in Mexico, among others. Christina Caicedo-Smith, VOA News, New York.
It's time for a tech segment, and joining us now is our technology reporter, Paul Ndiho. Hello, Paul.
Thank you, Esther. Bamboo Bikes by Boomers International, a bicycle production company in Kumasi, Ghana, have made a name among bike fans. Starting as a community project, Boomers International is now a leading producer of bamboo bicycles in West Africa, exporting bamboo bikes to the United States and other countries. Joining me from New York is Kwebena Danso, CEO of Boomers International and director of Yansu Project Model School, which seeks to empower rural communities with education and provide employment opportunities for rural youth. Mr. Danso, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me on Africa 54.
Great to see you. Briefly start by telling us a little bit about Boomers International. What have you been up to?
Yes, so Boomers International, as you're aware, we started. First of all, let me say hello to your viewers. Boomers International started in 2015, and it's a social enterprise based in rural Ghana, providing jobs and opportunities and also supporting education in the rural areas. So what we basically do there is to build bicycles out of bamboo. And currently, we've been selling in Germany for the past 10 years. We've been exporting to Germany for the past 10 years. And now we've started exporting them to the US under the brand Pampro Bikes. Pampro simply means bamboo. And so Pampro Bikes means bamboo bikes.
Congratulations on that. Exporting the United States, what does that mean for you and the community that you serve?
Yeah, it's a huge step for boomers and for Pampro bikes as well, because we know that a lot of people in the US love bikes, but these are more environmentally friendly. They ride so smoothly than any other bike because the bamboo actually flexes, and most of all, it also gives back to the community. It's empowering local communities, and I think that this is something the American market really is looking for. And so we are very happy to be here, and we know that this is going to be a huge jump for boomers as a company and for Pampro Bikes as a U.S. entity.
You talked about serving the community. You've done some great work when it comes to empowering the community. Can you speak about the Yansu project, the school that you've built for these kids?
Yes, so in 2016, I made a decision that we needed to have a school that is going to change the status quo of how how things are done in Africa. Because realize that in Africa we have almost everything. The resources are there, but the problem has always been with leadership. And due to we always tell the story of Africa as a continent of high corruption and stuff like that. But the idea was, if we could change the mindset of the young ones coming, then they can come with a different mindset to take positions of authority within the country. And because they have a different mindset, they can bring about change. And so the school is actually set up to train the next generation of leaders who are critical thinkers, problem solvers, and also eager to make changes, positive changes within their communities and their country and the world as a whole. And so currently we have about 525 kids, out of whom about 100 are on scholarships from the sales of the bicycles. And then we also have, we provide a high quality education for children in rural Ghana who would have not had the opportunity for such an educational system.
Wow, what a remarkable story. So you're suggesting that the proceeds that you get from selling these bikes is what you are investing in this school here? Yes,
so mostly the proceeds come from the sales of the bikes. So it's coming from part of the sales of the bikes. Part is also coming from our partners in Germany and donors who are supporting this worthy cause in trying to bring change to rural Ghana.
How about the bicycles? When you started exporting to the United States, for example, what does that mean for the local people, the young boys, the young girls who are working on these bikes?
Yes, so it's interesting to see that a bike that has been made in rural Ghana, like I sit somewhere in the rural part of Ghana, making a bike and see it being on the international market, it makes me feel proud. And I think it's the same thing that the workers there have. For instance, currently our bikes are all over on al-Adha cruise ships. So al-Adha cruise ships is the biggest European cruise ship, and this year they are changing all their fleet of bikes to our bikes, the bamboo bicycles, because these ships are always on the sea. The bamboo bikes doesn't rust, and so it's a perfect opportunity for the cruise ship. And so seeing that the bike that they made in that rural community has found its way onto the biggest cruise ship in Europe is a big personal achievement for most of them who are working on these bikes, and they see it as a moment of being proud of what they have been able to achieve.
Well, we've run out of time. I want to thank you very much, Kwabena.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Kwabena Danso is the CEO of Boomers International based in Kumasi, Ghana. That's today's Tech Report. Back to you, Esther.
Thank you very much, Paul. Be sure to join Paul Ndiho every Wednesday for his Tech Report right here on Africa 54. And we're going to circle back to Sierra Leone's presidential election outcome. And I'm joined live via Skype from Washington, D.C. by Stephen Nabil Rogers, a Sierra Leonean political analyst. Stephen, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you.
Let's go quickly here. We've got little time. Maada Bio is back at State House. And so the opposition is saying this election was not credible. What options do they have now?
Well, first of all, I think this is always, it happens, normally election that is very tightly contested. You expect that somehow the opposition is obviously not necessarily going to immediately accept the result. But I think there are very few options here in terms of how, if this is going to be reversed anyway, because obviously this has been certified. And as you saw, the president had been sworn in immediately, which has been happening over the past couple of cycle of elections. But so I think the main thing here is to get the country together, is to bring people back together, because the country normally gets very divided when elections like these happen. In part.
Right. A lot of people, though, have a lot of concerns about how quickly he was sworn in right after the Electoral Commission announced his win. What do you make of that?
Well, if you're in Sierra Leone, you wouldn't be necessarily very surprised, because the first time he was elected, he was also very quickly sworn in. Now, again, it really gets a little bit of surprising in the sense that there should be some kind of time where normally people come on and accept the election or address some whatever the grievances are, maybe from the losing side, or in this case, the party that didn't win. But Sierra Leone is one of those countries that doesn't necessarily have the kind of system in place that allows for some kind of when there's a gap in governance. So what you see here is they quickly go back and huddle around, bring people, the bishop, the chief justice, bring them quickly in the room, summarily, and then swear in the president. And that's what we saw there immediately. By the time the elections, everybody knew what the results were. You definitely, President Bio was sworn in for the second time.
Right.
But I think this is something.
Let's go to one more question because of time here. His first term was characterized by a lot of discontent from Sierra Leoneans, complaining about how they're experiencing economic hardships. How can he fix this?
Well, they have to. First of all, Sierra Leone has gone through a lot. There's been a contraction in terms of the economy. The bread and butter issues as this government actually initially campaigned has not been very much favorable to the people. The price of a bag of rice, I think, is 600,000 leones, which has significantly increased. And I think the president has to really come back to the table now and to address these issues, because if you can't feed the people, regardless of how you are trying to address other things such as free quality education, which is a great thing, but obviously the bread and butter issues are very important, and I think the president has to focus on that. And secondly, to address issues around job. There's a huge unemployment among young people on both sides of the aisle. People are unemployed, and which is why, as you see, elections become very, 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 very contested, because there's this assumption of a winner take all. So I think the president has to come back on the table and really address issues around job, issues around bread and butter issues, food on the table, and security in the country,
as well as shape his legacy. This is his last term. Stephen Nabi Rogers, a political analyst from Sierra Leone, joining us there. Thank you very much, viewers, for joining us on Africa 54. That does it for us. We'll see you back tomorrow.